I've been there since the internet went from like a directory to a search engine. I think there's a lot of possibility of disruption coming. Obviously, things like generative AI. Generative AI could replace search, right? I have a very good relationship with Google and I'm on a lot of meetings with them. All of a sudden, Sergey Brin showed on one of the Zoom calls. He's been like on a hammock on an island, I think, for the last 5 years. Those who don't know, he's the co-founder of Google. All of a sudden, he's back, right? Why do you think he's back? You think he got bored like sipping pina coladas on the beach? He's back because for the first time ever, Google is an existential threat.
Hey everyone, welcome to Marketing Movers. Today we have Alex Melen, the co-founder of SmartSites. They're a full-service digital marketing agency, and they've been on the Inc. 5000 fastest-growing company list for now 8 consecutive years. Since starting the business, they've launched over 900 websites. They've generated over $100 million in revenue for their clients, and they've doubled in size for every 18 months. You cannot do that if you are not a master of your craft. So he's got a lot of great insights and stories to share with us today. Thanks for joining the show, Alex. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I think it's funny, hearing those metrics. I think we're way over on websites launched and revenue, all of that. Inc. 5000, I was surprised, was very accurate. We actually were on it the 8th time. I think yesterday was the official announcement. So that is very, that information was very up to date. But yes, thank you for the intro. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was doing my research on you and I took a look at your LinkedIn just like the day before to double check and see if there's anything, I was like, that's super exciting. Great nugget to bring up at the beginning here. But,
Yeah.
I do think it's a nice parlay because the goal of the podcast is to answer the question of how do you create a high performing agency? And I think a lot of times we just look at, what did Alex do in the last 6 months? And while I think that's insightful, a lot of my belief of what makes us successful entrepreneurs started 10, 20, maybe 30 years ago. So I'd love if you'll go back in time with me here. I'd love to start in the beginning. You immigrated to New York City from Kyiv back in 1992. How old were you when you moved here?
That sounds like forever ago. Yes, I was 8 years old, so I wasn't involved in that decision, but obviously it was looking back on a great decision on my family's part, although it was very, very difficult for them. Yeah, I was fortunate in a couple ways. Very fortunate to have come to the U.S., which I think now we employ people from all over the world. And I could confidently say it's probably the best place to start a business, grow a business, anything entrepreneurial by far. There's nowhere close anywhere in the world. So fortunate in that regard. And I was fortunate enough to grow up during the start of the tech boom and was fortunate to be very involved in it. So when my family came to US, my dad was involved in computer science. So not necessarily internet stuff, but that gave me the exposure just by having a computer. So I forget how old I was, but maybe a couple of years after we came to the US, my parents literally spent all their money to buy a computer because that was my dad's line of work. And we had a computer in the house, 1990, let's say. And I was just given the ability to explore all of the both text stuff and internet stuff from an early time, from the like pre AOL, like for those who remember, dialing into CompuServe on the like 14.4K modem, right? From those years. So yeah, it's been a while. I guess to answer your question, the first company I started, T35 Hosting, was one of the first free web hosting companies. So that predates the start of Google and a couple other big companies that you guys might have heard of. For those that were around back then, this was around the time of what was it? GeoCities started, I think, the same month as I did. Hypermart, so all these Tripod, all these companies that don't exist anymore. But the idea back then, from both T35 Hosting and the other companies trying to do the same thing, was to allow people to have a web page on the internet quickly and free. So again, for context, for those that might have not been involved in the internet before then, and I started T35 Hosting in 1997. So in the mid 90s, if you wanted to start a website to have a page on the internet, just a simple page about yourself, let's say, or your resume, right? It was very, very difficult. You'd have to go to your internet service provider, your Verizon at the time. It was Bell Atlantic, and pay them thousands and thousands of dollars and wait months and months. And that was pretty much the only way to go. So the idea with the whole free web hosting model and this movement of free and cheap web hosting providers was to allow anyone to have a page on the internet that could be accessible from anywhere in the world. And at that time, that was very, very novel, and very, I want to say, revolutionary even. I wound up growing that T35 hosting to over 1 million customers, over the, I think it took 5-6 years to get to that. I still actually, it still exists, as opposed to all the other brands that I mentioned that no longer exist in a slightly different fashion than it did back then. But yeah, that was the first business I started in '97. I don't know, I'm afraid to even do the math, but
You were
seems like a lot of
13.
years ago. Yeah, I was 13. Yes, I started. And you know what's funny? I even had businesses before then, but that was the first real one that I incorporated and everything. And the reason it was G35 hosting, which seems like a weird thing to name it, is I had a lot of other businesses and domains. And at the time, one of the domains I had was T35.com, and it was top 35 websites. So this was, again, like pre-Google, right? Before searching the internet, when the way to use the internet was Yahoo, which was a directory of websites. The idea was to display the top 35 websites. And when I started the hosting business, to be able to have for everyone to be able to have a free website, it had to be a subdomain. Right? It was way too cost prohibitive to give people domains, so it would be something.t35.com. And the idea with t35.com is it was super short, right? As opposed to like if you use GeoCities. So GeoCities, for those who used it, went with the whole like homes and neighborhoods approach. So your website was GeoCities / like a random city / a neighborhood / your name. It was a very, very long URL. And my approach was opposite, to go short as possible. So I used the t35.com domain just because it was super, super short. So, but yeah, my first official incorporated business that actually had employees and generated revenue was when I was 13.
That's wild, because, that was something that really struck me when I was initially reading your story. When I was 13, I was focused on how do I land my first kickflip, and I'm like skateboarding outside. And it really made me reflect, because I didn't even know that entrepreneurship was like a path that could be for me until like my mid 20s. And I think, had I not had access to the internet, which your first company was predating, Google and all this stuff, I was like, how did you get involved in entrepreneurship? Or what was was it your dad being involved in computer science? Was he a big influence, or what else was there to help kind
Yeah,
of?
it was. You know what? It was. I think being in the right place at the right time and being inquisitive. So my dad doing programming stuff. I think he wasn't to be honest. I don't think he was even using the internet for years after I started T35 hosting. So it was a little bit of a different world. The only thing in common was the access to technology and having the computer. And I remember, and by the way, that itself was super risky. Leaving like a 10, 11-year-old with your most prized possession while you go to work. I took that thing apart like 5 times. I remember I burnt out the CPU. I remember overclocking. It was before the i486. So there was a big transition from the i386 computers to the i486, because with the 486 RAM and everything else was removable. So there was a lot more you could do. But that in itself, I think that was the biggest risk they took on. I'm sure I broke that computer more times than I repaired it. But yeah, I think having access to that and just seeing the web stuff built up around me, and just seeing, it was like mostly just playing around with it at first, but the potential I saw there was huge. And it was even like, so the original website, now I was trying everything just because it was so cool just to test. To me, it was the coolest thing. They could put a website or a whole business idea on the internet in the evening, and then wake up in the morning and see how many people went to your website, right? Things happen without you naturally doing it. With the T35 top 35 websites, I played around with putting advertising on it, and it was like at that time there was a lot of internet casinos, which by the way are coming back now. But at the time, because it was so unregulated, there was a lot of internet casino stuff. So I put an internet casino banner, and I remember I went to sleep I woke up, I logged into like the account where they show you like your commissions and everything. I made like $1,000, which I don't know. I was not even 13 yet. I was 12 years old. It's like, holy shit, I just made $1,000. So it was that kind of stuff that just was very interesting to me, and just testing and playing around with different concepts, different ideas. Even T35 hosting, which was probably the more successful of the things I played around with and did, was certainly not my first thing I tried, or even the 30th thing I tried. So,
Really?
it's,
Okay. Because it looks like, of course, the only thing that you really see online is like what were the
oh,
most
you only see
successful
the successes. You
agencies.
don't see the 29
Right.
failures that came before it.
So tell us about, because, okay, T37, you started in 1997, you
T35.
were 13,
Yeah,
or sorry,
it's
T35
okay.
in 1997. And then you started your first agency with your younger brother in 2009. What was the impetus to start that business, and what happened in between?
Yeah, good question. So I ran T35 hosting for a while. Eventually, I think, first of all, being young, it was very difficult. There was a lot of advertisers that, when they found out how young I was, just wouldn't pay me because the contracts were not legally binding. And at the time, it was a lot less common than it is today, right? Today, you have a lot of YouTubers, influencers, whatever it is, that are making a lot of money on the internet that are under 18, right? When I was doing it, it was extremely rare, and it came off as odd to a lot of companies I worked with. So that in itself was a challenge. And I think, looking back on it, of course, I was also, and this was like from 13 and through college. So I was, looking easier to look back on it than at the time then, but I was very cautious in growing the business. I never took on any equity or investments. There was a big push at one point to have me sell the business by a couple investment banks who would obviously make money on it. There were some propositions to take the company public, and I didn't do any of them because I just well, as a teenager, you don't have the full scope of understanding of what all of that even means, but I took a very conservative approach to it. So ultimately, I kept growing the business at 10 to 30% a year, some years more. But the whole industry grew around me, right? You had companies that popped up like GoDaddy, and they still do this, by the way. So they invest so much into marketing that their break even is typically, I think the last study I looked at was 10.5 years. So literally, they will spend thousands of dollars on that customer that will pay them $10 a month, knowing A, they'll make money on them on year 11, and B, they upsell them on a lot of other things. So the whole industry kind of grew around me, and T35 hosting still exists. We don't do free hosting because there's a lot of abuse and other things that kind of led to the end of free. I don't think anyone does free hosting. Even Google briefly started doing free hosting, and even they stopped. But T35 hosting still exists. I worked in several different professions in between, along with running T35 hosting, just trying to find where I could make the biggest impact. So I worked in corporate finance for a little bit. I worked as an actuary for a little bit. I worked in investment banking for a little bit. I wound up after, and those were all like 6 month increments. Like I was an actuary for 6 months. I did investment banking for 6 months. It was very quick increments. I wound up at MediaVest, which is part of Publicis, very just coincidentally, doing digital marketing for Samsung first, and then Walmart. And I did that for 3 years. I was there, almost 3 years, and that job I really enjoyed. And I started SmartSites with my younger brother. From my standpoint, the idea was to bring the kind of cutting edge marketing that was being done at the Publicis level for the Fortune 500s to the small, medium sized businesses. And it's things today that kind of seem obvious, but 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't as much. So the kind of marketing we were doing, like targeting audiences, like very precise remarketing, like that kind of stuff. Even today, I could say most like SMBs, like think roofer, plumber, I don't know, realtor, those restaurant, right? Even today, they're not doing. But 10, 15 years ago, they didn't even know that kind of stuff existed. So the idea with SmartSites was to bring that kind of leading digital services to the SMB space that at that time was very exclusive to the enterprise level folks.
It seems like throughout your life, there's been this pattern of being able to identify opportunities early. Um, do you feel like you have a way of thinking or a heuristic that allows you to identify this is something worth investing my time into? Or do you feel like it's almost more so been rapid prototyping where you're just willing to try and fail until you figure out something that works for you?
Oh man, good question. I think for me personally, it was a lot of trial and error stuff, almost like I was doing with websites and businesses early on, but with my career. Would I recommend it for other people? I'm not sure. I think obviously everyone's different. Everyone's risk tolerance profile is different, and different places in your life. Like if you have like a wife and kids and everything, are you gonna quit your high paying job and try another job that might fire you? Probably not, right? At Media Vest Publicis, when I quit it to start SmartSites, I was making very good six-figure income. I had very high level job, high level authority. I was hiring my own team members. I was um, really, it was a very safe place to be. To quit that and start something from zero, obviously it's very risky. And so were my past hopping between jobs. But I think it is important if it fits your risk profile. If you're really, for those listening who are towards the start of their career, coming out of college and things like that, I think for sure, if you get a job and you're sitting there month six and you're like, is this really the best use of my time? Am I providing the best value to a company, to myself? Am I advancing myself? This for sure should be questions you ask yourself, because you don't want to 10 years down the road be like, shit, this was not the profession I wanted to be in. So for sure, I would encourage that kind of behavior, but as long as your risk profile allows for it.
Right. And what were the early days of smart sites like? I know you guys have doubled every 18 months since starting. What were some of like the big challenges that you guys encountered that you had to work through?
Yeah, good question. Man, it was very different. And if later on, I don't know if I want to encourage all the listeners, but might as well, since this is going to be public. But later on, if you search, so originally the company was Mellon LLC, like my name, Melen LLC. See if it's still on there. There was gonna be a pilot about us, and you could, if you search, let's see if I could get it to come up. It still comes up. If you search Mellon LLC pilot, you'll see visually what it was like when we started. But yeah, we were very scrappy business. We started, it was mostly my brother's friends from Cornell. And from my brother's perspective, the way all this went down is I think he was starting his third year of Cornell, and he didn't seem like he wanted to go into the corporate world. Although might be putting words in his mouth, but he came to me, and at the time he was already running a link building SEO service. And he was like, when I graduate, we should just combine what you're doing and this SEO service and start a digital marketing company. And to me at that time, this was 2009, I guess, something like that. To me at that time, I was like, shit, I think this is already like, we're like 10 years late to the game, right? There was already so many companies doing it and everything. I'm like, if we do it, we can't do this when you graduate in 2 years. He was starting his third year. I'm like, we got to do it right now. And he's like, what if I graduate this year? I'm like, I don't know. You got to take 2 years of Cornell in 1 year. He's like, yeah, why not? And you end up graduating that year, and we started the company that year. So that was where he came from. His perspective, he brought over a lot of his Cornell friends with him to start the company with us. So we had, I don't know, 8, 9 people at the time, and it was a very scrappy operation where we're still trying to figure out what our main value add is. And I use that phrase a lot in other podcasts and speeches, but I think it's important for all companies, no matter whether you're agency or not, to really think about what your main main proposition or value add is to clients. And that was where we struggled with for a little bit. So we started doing social media for a little bit, and that wasn't really our strong suit. So we do it now, but at the time we kind of went very broad, and then we tightened up based on where we were providing the most value to our customers. And we wound up tightening up on, we made websites, and we would do SEO, pay-per-click, so search marketing. That was our core services. But it took us a little while. We did such a good job marketing for outdoor gear e-commerce company that we were like, you know what, let's start a outdoor gear e-commerce company ourselves. So we bought outdoorgear.net, and we started our own e-commerce business, and we actually made tons of revenue, did very well because we knew the marketing side. And then we got into all these like logistical things, like packaging, shipping, dealing with the returns. There's this lady who claimed there was a glass inside of her glove, and that specific product was a dropship product. We didn't even touch it. And she was like, "I'm suing you because I cut my hand." So we were like went very broad. We started doing like social media stuff when it wasn't very popular, not very popular, but very little companies were investing into social media. And a lot of it was like buying likes for your pages. This was when likes was still a thing. So we got into that, and a lot of the business came from politicians. So politicians would call us up and they'd be like, "I need a million more likes, right? I need to make it look like I have a million followers." We started doing all that kind of stuff. And then it took us a little while to really tighten up and be like, our value add is not to hire like high-end PhD computer science people and make them pack boxes, right? That's not the best use of anyone's time. So it took a little bit to really tighten up and see, like, for our clients, where do we provide the most value? Is it getting politicians fake likes on Facebook? I don't think so. So yeah, we definitely experimented a lot. A lot of people slept at the office. It was like very scrappy operation.
Yeah. And what's the strategic focus now?
Yeah, so good question. So our core business, those core services remain the same. So making websites, doing SEO, and doing pay-per-click. We do it for thousands of clients now on a monthly basis. We manage well over 100 million in ad spend, really 200 million ad spend, a lot of ad spend across Google, Facebook, Microsoft ads. And we've slowly rolled out other core services where it's much more thought out and beta tested and everything. So we added social media marketing, we added email marketing. The idea, which has always been that way, is to be not only a full service digital agency, but a partner to our SMB clients. And we do have Fortune 500 clients too, and we make government stuff. We made Harvard's website, but our focus is always to help the SMB folks. And with SMB folks, the only way that really works well for everyone is that we become their true digital partner. And what I mean by that is, if a client needs a website, we'll make them a website. If they also want to do social media, email marketing, SEO, pay-per-click, anything digital, we need to be there to help them, because the last thing a roofer, plumber, realtor, or even medium-sized businesses want is to be dealing with like 20 different agencies. Like, this guy does my social media, this guy does my website login updated, so the social media guy can't connect to it. This guy does our pay-per-click, but the landing page broke, which is done by this other agency. So the idea was always to be a full digital partner. And we kind of built services out around that as more and more people kind of not even wanted, but needed a social media component. We hired the right people and we created the right processes to be able to add that as a service as well. We beta piloted it on current clients at discounted rates or free rates for a while, and slowly rolled it out until it was the quality of service that we could provide to clients.
That's interesting. Is that a strategy that you would recommend for someone who's getting started as well, to provide the services for
Man,
free? And
man, there's so many learnings I had along the way. So when we just started, we would make cheap websites. Let me rephrase that. We try to be low cost option to be able to attract more customers and grow quicker. The idea is always growth, and we could talk about that next, but there's a whole reason for growth that I think is very important to everyone listening. But the idea was always for growth. So we originally priced things very cheaply. I think we were making websites for $1,000. And granted, this was 15 years, almost 12 years ago. It was still not the right price point. So what ends up happening in that situation, and this is for those that have not done this yet, I'll walk you through exactly what happens. You build a website for $1,000. It probably will cost you. You think it's going to cost? We were thinking that it would cost us like 900, and we sell it for 1,000, right? It winds up costing twice or three times more than you think it does. It takes probably twice or three times longer than you think it does. So we wind up losing money on the website. The website becomes a much longer process than the project manager and everyone involved anticipates. So now the employee's frustrated, the client's frustrated. We told them 30 days, but the client just requested a 300th revision. And all of a sudden it's not 30 days, but they're still upset. And even though they requested 300 revisions, they're like, you promised me 30 days. So at the end of the day, we wind up losing money. We wind up going over time, over budget. The project manager is stressed out. The client's pissed off. They don't care. They only paid $1,000. They get a crap product. They're still gonna be pissed even if they paid $500. And everyone's upset. And then the client who we just lost money on top of it, goes online and leaves us a bad review, right? And then the employees are so frustrated they quit, right? Everyone loses, and that's it. Like it's very, very good. Go out of business 6 months later, right? Luckily, we were always very agile and quick to learn as we went along, and we were able to make changes. But for sure, that was a terrible model, right? I'd rather turn down 90% of clients if what we're offering doesn't meet what they're looking for than go down that road where we lose money, clients pissed off. Even if we don't lose money, let's say we break even or make a little bit of money, clients pissed off, employees frustrated, everyone loses at that point. For us, our reputation was always the most important thing. And if you search SmartSite reviews, we probably have the most and highest 5-star reviews of any other agency out there, period. Like people bigger than us, smaller than us, it doesn't matter. And that's very, very hard to maintain. You don't maintain that by taking on clients that are not good fit. So good question. Should you offer things cheap or free? I think it becomes a slippery slope very quickly, and I wouldn't. Perhaps you have a new service you're rolling out and you want some clients to volunteer as beta testers / guinea pigs. Maybe that's an opportunity, but for sure, I would not let me grow my business. I'll give everyone a cheap website or cheap marketing or whatever. Never works out for anyone. And your reputation is the hardest thing to repair. It's the easiest way to tank your business. All you have to do, and it's very, by the way, for growing companies, that's always the biggest struggle, no matter what industry you're in, whether you're an agency or a supermarket or a restaurant. As you grow, if you don't staff up quick, if you understaff, if you overstaff, you'll go out of business because you'll lose money, right? If you understaff and wind up with bad reviews, that's impossible to repair, right? Even if you look at the numbers, like Google reviews, let's say, right? You have 50 5-star reviews. All of a sudden, your current batch of clients are all pissed off because you're understaffed and behind on things, and you get 8 1-star reviews. Your average drops so far, and you lose so much business that it's crazy to make up for 8 1-star reviews to get your average to say above 4.5. If you do the math, it's crazy how many 5-star reviews you'll need to make up for that, right? So reputation is really important. That I think that always has to be a focus for everything you do. I would not encourage people to be the cheapest. I would also these days not encourage people to, unless you have the financial resources to withstand it, I would not encourage people to do the wide net that we did and try to offer all different kinds of services and see what stick, right? You could do that, but you have to understand that you'll lose money for a long time until you fine tune it. I think the better approach these days is to hopefully you're going in already knowing that, but figure out what you're really good at and what your value add is. Like, I don't know, even let's say making websites, and we work in every industry, so can't even say we follow this advice. But if you're starting now, let's say you want to make websites, right? Maybe you're really good at making dentist websites, and you've already made 8 of them, right? focus on that first, right? Focus on where your value and why does that become your value add? Well, you already made 8 of them. You already know a lot of the structure it needs. Know the kind of pages it needs. So that saves you time. You could make it quicker, right? You could make it quicker. You already know the services. The project managers already know how to manage that kind of dentist. The salespeople know how to sell it, right? So these days I think, especially with so many agencies being out there and so many other companies being out there in every industry, I think it really helps to specialize and really think about what your value add is, what you're good at, where do you want to be better than other agencies, right? Um, I think these days that's the way to go.
On the note of growth, what have been the most effective strategies for you guys? Are you eating your own dog food? Has it mainly been through the reputation, word of mouth? What's worked best?
Yeah, good question. So we don't do any outbound sales. So that means we don't do cold calling or calling of any kind or any kind of outbound marketing. Very uncommon for agencies our size. And just for reference, we're a little over 400 employees. For agencies our size, from what I understand, almost all of them do outbound. We don't do any outbound. We do a lot of our marketing of ourselves, and then the salespeople take the calls coming in. And what I mean by that is we spend a lot of money on Google Ads, on Microsoft Ads, on all the different platforms like keywords like PPC management, website design, SEO agency. We spend, I don't know, 300,000 a month, and that then gets the phone calls of people coming in, calling in, and the salespeople take those calls, and that's how we grow. In terms of continuing to grow, so that's literally where we start at. It's always from the top, right? We increase the amount of sales coming in as there's more sales coming in, more clients being signed, and then we hire more project managers to take on those clients. For sure, we're reaching ceilings of how much we could spend on search marketing, right? Spending 300,000 a month. Can I spend $3 million a month bidding on PPC management and stuff? Probably not. We're ready. Our ROI is very tight, and eventually we'll run out of volume. So we definitely are diversifying into other ways. I know a lot of agencies do conferences, but ROI and that is also a little shaky. I know that a lot of agencies do outbound marketing calling, which is an area we have not explored before. So there's definitely different avenues. But yeah, for us, it's always been a market ourselves approach. Reputation for sure carries us, right? If we had on Google, our average reviews were like 2-3 stars instead of 5 stars, I'm sure we would convert at like 1% instead of 10%. And if we converted even a little bit less than we do now, we would not get an ROI from the search marketing. So there's for sure a lot of components that go into it. But for us, the growth has always been from increasing our marketing spend. And it's always a risk, right? You increase your marketing spend without transactional return, right? The return is lifetime value of the customer return. And that's an important mindset, not only for agencies, but I feel like a lot of businesses sometimes lack that. We have a lot of clients who always think of it as a transactional ROI. Like, I want to be profitable on that one click from Google Ads today. I think the mindset has to be lifetime value, and a lot of things have to go into that. Like the person who signs up with us for a website, if we do a good job on the website, guess what? They're going to come to us for SEO, pay-per-click, and recurring monthly services, not just a website, which is a one-time thing. Not only that, they're going to then recommend their brother, uncle, and I don't know, realtor to us. So there's a lot of components, but it's for sure have to look at it that way and be willing to lose money this year on the marketing spend. Marketing spend we spent in 2024, we are not ROI positive in 2024, right? And I think that's a mindset that a lot of agencies don't have and aren't willing to take, and because of that, they don't. And by the way, our growth is we grow a good amount. Like you said at the beginning, we double in size roughly every 18 months. So right now we have 400 employees. In 18 months, we'll have 800. It's a good clip, but it's certainly not like the California tech space growth, where they like the goals are like that they present to the VCs. They're like, we'll grow 100x every month, right? We're not at those levels, but it's a good clip. It's a good clip of growth. And it, unless you have another question that you were leading to, we could talk about growth a little bit. I think that's an important one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Dive in.
Yeah, so also gets, I think pretty often gets asked whether it's in speaking sessions I do at the Q&A or podcast. I always talk about growth, and we double in size every 18 months, and Inc. 5000 now for 8 year, and it's 3 year growth. So we technically, every single year that we could qualify for Inc. 5000, we did, right? And I think our 3 year growth on this time we qualified was 188%. And that's roughly, you need to be, it's getting harder and harder, by the way. Our growth speeds up, but the list of companies gets more competitive. But I always get asked, do you really need that? Do you really need to be, because there's a lot of challenges, right? If I were to say, let's leave us at 400 employees, I'd have a lot less headaches. Growing a company and growing it correctly, growing the right departments with the right amount of people, not over hiring, not under hiring, putting the right people in place, the right processes in place. Because the processes that work at 100 employees aren't going to work at 400 employees. Your corporate structure at 100 is not going to be the same as 400. There's a lot of headaches. The reason for that, and I've had these discussions with a couple people, and I want to say not everyone agrees with me, so take all this with a grain of salt. But for us, growth has always been very important, not really to like make more money. Like, make money is always one of our lowest priorities. Our priority is that we provide value to our clients. Clients are happy and employees are happy. That's our priorities, right? So growing isn't necessarily make more money. If anything, I think as we've been growing, as a percent, we definitely make less money. But I think even as absolute dollar amounts, we've been making less money. The reason for growth are twofold. Number one, there's a lot of efficiencies we gain. So when we do SEO for 10 clients versus 3,000 clients, the what we could provide at the same cost is a lot higher now. We also, since we work with thousands of clients, when the dentist comes to us and wants to know what kind of SEO strategy we're going to do, we don't have to guess or test things. We're doing it for 100 other dentists, and we know exactly what to do. So the efficiency improves, the results improve. It's really better. We provide more for the same amount by having the growth and continuing the growth. So that's number one. Number two, I think growth is super, super, super important for employee retention. An example I like to give is a law firm. So law firms, for example, is a good example because law firms at the partner level are usually very stagnant. And what I mean by that, usually a law firm has, I don't know, 4 or 5 partners. And by the way, if you Google it, I know this because I wrote a book on automotive search marketing. And I always compare how it's a small market. So there's 13,000 dealerships in the US. So the market for my book was very, very small. There's 1 million law firms in the US, an average 4 to 5 partners. So a whole different ball game. But if you think about a law firm, 4 to 5 partners, and let's say you join a law firm, you work your ass off for 15 years, what's your potential there, right? You want to become a partner. Usually to become, like, it happens, but usually to become a partner, one of the other partners has to retire or pass away, right? That's your growth potential. Very rarely are they going to add the 7th name to the building, right? You really have to do something incredible. So joining a law firm, and by the people join law firms knowing that, so it's not like a hidden thing that they get. Holy like at this, I worked 10 years and my name's not in the building. People know, but that's the way it works. In other industries like the marketing world, if I retain the 400 employees and we keep it like this, that means a PPC analyst who joins as a junior PPC analyst, what are their potentials within the company, right? They want to become a manager of a department. They want to move to a different line of business. They want to, they change their mind and they want to do something a little different. I then offer them 0 opportunities. What keeps a junior PPC analyst at the company, right? We could keep paying them more. At one point, we're going to be significantly overpaying them for their position, but there will be no new positions for them because we're just keeping the status quo. So with growing, one of the most important things we offer is opportunities for our employees and help with employee retention. And that's been a huge one. It's I think every company should offer opportunities for their employees to move up if they want to, by the way. And not everyone wants to, not everyone should, right? There's a lot of people that are fine working at a certain level and staying at that level. They don't want more responsibility. They're fine where they are. But for those that want to try something different, they want to manage a team, manage a department. If you're not growing, you're just not offering those opportunities. They literally have to wait out for someone else to quit, get fired, or pass away, right? So that's been one of their big ones for growth. And I've had a lot of conversations with companies who disagree and say there's too many challenges with continuing to grow, and eventually there's a ceiling. I don't think there's a ceiling. I think there's different struggles at each level, but I don't think necessarily is a ceiling. And I think for employee retention and to really grow and develop your employees, right? You have to be in the mindset that you, it's not just like you hire this person and you work them as much as you can until they're maxed out, right? The mindset has to be you hire this person and you develop them to their best potential. That best potential might be to stay at that level. They don't want the responsibility. But if they want to manage a team, manage a department or something like that, the opportunity has to be there, even if not immediate, right? It has to be something that they could grow to and try. Without that, you lose the best people, you keep the worst people, and you wind up in a very bad spot.
So what's the long-term vision for the business? As you think about people saying, oh, well, there's a cap to this. And you're like, I don't think there is. Where do you see the company going over the next 5, 10 years?
Oh man, yeah. So it's tough. I think generally speaking, we're continuing our growth trajectory as we've had forever. But I think on the macro level, the amount of change I've seen in our industry is probably the most it's ever been. And I've been there since the beginning, right? I've been there since the internet went from like a directory to a search engine. I think there's a lot of possibility of disruption coming. Obviously, things like generative AI and generative AI could replace search, right? I have a very good relationship with Google, and I'm on a lot of meetings with them. And this February, I think last February, all of a sudden Sergey Brin showed up on one of the Zoom calls. He's been on like on an island. He's been like on a hammock on an island, I think, for the last 5 years. Those who don't know, he's the co-founder of Google. All of a sudden he's back, right? Why do you think he's back? You think he got bored like sipping pina coladas on the beach? He's back because for the first time ever, there's Google as an existential threat, right? I think since Google started, there's never been any opportunity that they could be replaced. Like it's just not like replaced by what? Replaced by Facebook, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But before, where you would go, let's say you want a apple pie recipe. So if you go on Google right now, you search apple pie recipe, you'll get probably 10,000 spammy recipe websites. You'll click onto them. If you've ever been on these recipe websites, they're going to have like 50 banners on them. You're going to wind up clicking on something by accident, wind up on a different website and get a virus in your computer, and your computer formats itself and you're done, right? That's your journey to get your apple pie recipe. Now all of a sudden you ask generative AI or either on your phone or through Alexa or whatever it is, give me the apple pie recipe and repeat it to me slowly, step by step. And it does without giving you any viruses or giving you that bad UI UX experience. It's really game changing where there's certainly so much disruption that could happen. And ChatGPT has a search engine now, by the way. So much disruption that could happen. At the same time, you have so many macro things going on. Google just lost their antitrust lawsuit. Of course, they're gonna appeal it, and I don't think they're gonna get broken up. But there's so many things that could change. For example, if they are no longer, I think the government is going to get involved in their exclusive deals. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to get broken up, but I don't think they're going to allow to make exclusive deals like they have. The big one, of course, is with Apple. So Google paid, I forget, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say 20 billion. Apple pays, I forget who pays who. Forget who pays who in this, but anyway, the Apple relationship they have, where Google's the default search in Apple, right? If all of a sudden it's not, and let's say Microsoft is, that's really going to be game changing because Microsoft has almost no mobile market share now. So a lot of disruption happening. If all of a sudden all these recipe websites become obsolete, do these businesses even need a website, right? Like I'm in the business of making websites. Granted, ChatGPT doesn't create their own stuff, and they actually take content from these recipe websites, so it's not as simple as that. But I think at a macro level, there's a lot of change coming. Um, and I wrote my book a year and a half ago, something like that. It was before ChatGPT. I mentioned somewhere in the end that there's generative AI stuff coming and it's going to be very disruptive. I'm like, don't worry, Google's going to know content that's generative AI generated. They're gonna at least point it out or block it, and that hasn't really happened. So it's a lot of changes coming. So long-winded answer to your question. I think for us, it's business as usual, even with all of this stuff going on. Generative AI, I thought would really help us improve our content creation because for SEO, we do a ton of content creation. It surprisingly hasn't. It's helped us make better content where we use ChatGPT for research and outlines and things like that, but certainly has not allowed us to produce more content quicker as I was hoping. So it's all kind of small improvement type tools that are coming out. But for sure, everything moves to generative AI. No one needs websites. It's going to be a whole different world. But for now, it's business as usual. I think I don't think we're going to have such huge disruptions happening. But I think for the first time ever, there's potential for it, right? Potential for a change in how we use the internet. And again, this hasn't happened since Yahoo's directory got changed into Yahoo search engine and then Google search engine. Really like a complete change of how we look for things online is possible. Might not happen, right? Google could just incorporate some of this and they remain the main search engine, but it's definitely possible for uh, the internet world to be different in 5 years from now. I don't think it'll be in 3 years, but maybe in 5 years. For people who are safe shoes as I am, I think it's a continuation of business as usual. I think you always have to be very agile, and it's something I see big companies lose. They lose the not necessarily ability, but they lose their agility. They're no longer as agile in their decisions, processes, and not as quick to pivot. I think businesses who are become very set in their ways and not agile are the ones who are going to go out of business. For everyone else in the agency world, I think if you stay agile and keep up with what's happening, I think there'll always be a place for digital partners in the world.
Well, I know we're coming up on time here. I really appreciate you hanging out with us and sharing your expertise. For those who want to continue the conversation with you or want to learn more about what you do, where should they go to check you out?
Yeah, good question. So SmartSites, it's smartsites.com, SmartSites.com. You can also Google SmartSites and see all our amazing reviews. For me personally, if you go to my name, which is alexmelen.com, ALEXMELEN.com. On the bottom, I have all my social media stuff. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn these days. So feel free to find me and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Well, thanks again for joining, Alex. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.